Hey, I'm Stephanie, and it's time for a potentially divisive video, a haul. Some people love them, some people love to hate them, and then there's me. Like a lot of us, I am trying to navigate life in a very consumerism-oriented world. On the one hand, I really want to take advantage of the abundance available to me, but on the other hand, I don't want to lose sight of what's actually important. Things like having time, peace, not having a heart attack when I look at my bank account. So I do hauls a little bit differently than most people on the interwebs in that I am trying to take what I call an Adagio beauty approach, meaning I'm trying to slow down the tempo of my purchases, giving myself more time to make good decisions, more time to enjoy and appreciate what I already have. And that slower purchasing tempo means it normally takes me quite a while to collect enough things to actually have enough to talk about in a video. So today, I will share with you the purchases that I made for myself during a 6-month period. I emphasize for myself because I'm on YouTube, so I have to differentiate my purchases. Every once in a while, enough money trickles in over AdSense that I can reinvest that money into my channel, purchasing products for review. The makeup items I'll discuss today, however, are just for me. They're things I would have purchased even if I wasn't on YouTube. And that has the distinct advantage that these products aren't necessarily of the moment. But if I did things right, they are still relevant at this moment because I purchased them in the hopes that they would genuinely add value to my makeup routine. So today I'll share what I call a one-hand haul because all of the things I purchased within a 6-month period for myself can fit into one hand, more or less. The question is, were these good purchases? Or if I could turn back time, would I go back and stop myself? Let's start with lippies. In my last one-hand haul video, I mentioned that I repurchased my one and only lipstick sunscreen because I had run out of mine. And I'll link that video in case you want to see it. Basically, that PERRICONE MD lipstick is still really nice, still really comfortable to wear, nice color. My favorite thing about it is that the SPF doesn't taste bad. It's great. But I have come to realize that when I go to the beach, I don't necessarily want to wear a lipstick as sunscreen just because it feels like a little too much when I'm not wearing any other makeup on my face. So I wanted to see if I could find maybe a clear lip balm with sunscreen in it. And the most important aspect is I don't want it to taste bad because I have tried so many lip balm sunscreens that tasted nasty and chemically. So when I saw this one go on sale, I thought I'd give it a try. It is the Sheen Screen Hydrating Lip Balm with SPF 50 from Ultra Violette, and it's in the shade Silk Pillow. This checks a lot of my boxes. It feels moisturizing and comfortable. It has SPF 50. Even though it does have a slight tint to it, it's kind of like ever so slightly ballet pink. For the most part, it's just a clear balm because it goes on so sheerly. And my favorite part is that it doesn't leave that nasty chemical SPF aftertaste in my mouth when I wear it. This does, however, smell like mint and taste like mint, and if I get any on my tongue, it kind of tingles in a minty sort of way. It reminds me a little bit of a very subtle version of the Dior lip maximizers because those also kind of smelled a little bit minty and had like a minty, fresh plumping sensation on the lips that I wasn't so crazy about. This doesn't feel plumping at all to me. I'm someone who can't stand lip plumpers, so that's important, but that ever so slight tingling sensation does kind of throw me off. It's mostly only present when I get it on my tongue. Now, I don't mind the smell of mint in a lip product, and I do like the way this looks and feels, but I do think that ever so slight tingly sensation would keep me from repurchasing this in the future. Would I classify this as a regret? Not really, because I do like the way it looks and feels. I feel like it does protect my lips. They didn't get burned at all this summer, and I was in the sun quite a lot. So it's not a regret because it's not going to feel like a chore to use it up. Moving on, about a month later, I was on the road living out of various bags, and I had the PERRICONE MD lip sunscreen in one bag and my Ultra Violette in another, and somehow I never managed to have either of those bags when I really needed a lip sunscreen. So I ended up running into an Ulta and ended up picking up this Jack Black Intense Therapy Lip Balm with SPF 25. This is super comfortable to wear. It doesn't have any minty tingling sensation. It smells like lemon cake. And it doesn't taste like anything, which is actually what I'm looking for in a lip balm. Yes, it only has SPF 25, but that's better than nothing. I think this one's actually my favorite out of all 3 lip sunscreens that I now have because it's just so easy and comfortable to wear, doesn't tingle at all, doesn't have any color, so I can wear it at the beach or, on the streets, wherever I happen to be. So I think this is my favorite. But if I could go back in time and tell myself to only buy this one, I'm not sure I'd be completely happy, because I think having 3 separate lip balms in various bags is kind of the magic number for me. Because once I had these 3, I was always able to find at least one of them at any given time. The next item was a repurchase for work. Not my work here on YouTube, but my work on the stage. If you saw my recent foundation declutter, then you'll know I decluttered 2 RCMA travel palettes because they were aging out of my collection and the formula was starting to go off. So I decided to repurchase the smaller of the 2 palettes because I was going to be traveling for work with only a carry-on and I didn't want to bring any liquid foundation with me. I still really like this. It's the best cream foundation that I have tried to date. A little bit goes a long way because it is very pigmented, but it's also easy to sheer out. So I'm glad that I can get the coverage that I want depending on the situation. I also get a whole bunch of different shades in here, everything from my summer shade to my winter shade and everything in between, so I can always find a perfect match. This was a very utilitarian purchase for me. I would have loved to try some other cream foundations out there. There's the Clé de Peau one that looks really nice. I've always wanted to try the one from Merit. There's the new Dior one. And part of me, my makeup monster, gets really curious about all of these things that I've never tried, but when it comes to my stage work, I can't take any chances. I don't want to invest a bunch of money in a foundation that might not work for me, whereas I know that this one is going to work. So as boring as it might be, I think this was the smartest choice for me. Another refill type purchase was for glowy foundation. I had been using the Dior Forever Skin Correct Concealer as my glowy foundation, and it was working beautifully. But it was about 3 or 3.5 years old, and that means it's getting to the point where it's a little iffy and it started to irritate my skin. So that meant it was time for it to go. So I was either going to buy the Haus Labs foundation, which although is something I've never owned before, I had the opportunity to borrow it and review it on my channel last year. So I know how it works. That would have been kind of a sure bet. Or I could let my makeup monster have a little bit of fun and try something new. The Dewdrop foundation from Surratt had been on my wish list for a long time, and I finally succumbed, and I ended up getting it in the shade 4. The factor that ended up finally pushing me towards the Surratt foundation was that I found it on eBay for $25 in original packaging from a seller with really good ratings. And this foundation normally costs like over $70. So when I saw it at that price, I made the impulsive decision and I just grabbed it. Was that wise? I'm not so sure. Yes, the seller had good ratings. Yes, it seems like they only sell authentic products, but I have been unable to find an online cosmetic calculator that has Surratt batch codes in it, so I haven't been able to check how old this foundation actually is. Just in case you've never heard of that before, an online cosmetic calculator is kind of like a publicly accessible database that contains a bunch of brands and also their batch codes. So you can enter in the brand of your product and the batch code, which is normally like a little code that's typed somewhere on the foundation that you might want or the concealer, and then you can see when that product was manufactured. This is a great tool when you're shopping secondhand, but also at the drugstore, because I find that some of those products can sit on the shelves for literal years. So checking a batch code could mean taking home a fresher product that will last longer. I'll link a couple in the show notes in case you want to check them out. But back to this foundation. I was watching Amanda Z try this out on her channel, and she just kind of held it up and she pushed the button and a whole bunch of foundation just kind of easily fell into her mixing palette. When I try to use this, I can press this little button with all of the might that my tiny little hands can muster, and it's hard for me to get even a drop out. Is this a me problem, or is it a defective bottle, or is it just a design issue, or am I being punished for my cheapskate ways and I was sent a counterfeit? The thing that's giving me comfort is that I have seen so many YouTubers complain about the delivery mechanism for this product. What I'm thinking I want to do now is decant it, but I don't even know how I would get at the product to do that. I saw that Haute Mess Tom did it, but I think that was because their bottle broke, not because they actively took it apart. So if anyone has any idea of how to dismantle this so that I could put the product into a more useful container, I'm all ears. The foundation itself seems nice as long as I wear it in a thin layer. If I try to build this up, it can look pretty heavy and makeup-y on me. And that's also giving me pause because so many people have talked about this and said it looks natural no matter what they do. So part of me is wondering if I wasted $25 on a counterfeit product. So learn from my mistakes. Don't buy from an unknown seller because even if this is the real deal, part of me is always going to wonder if I got duped. And that part of me is wondering if I should just suck it up and buy another bottle directly from the brand during their Black Friday sale. The more sensible part of me is thinking I should just put this into a better container somehow and call it a day. Because it does look nice, right? And the last thing I bought for my personal use was a liquid bronzer because I had used my old one up. And I have decided that liquid bronzer is an excellent tool for someone like me. The reason for this is because I no longer want to buy different shades of foundations for different seasons. I tend to have a pretty dramatic difference in skin tone from the winter to the summer because as soon as it's warm outside, I am on the water. And despite the fact that I wear sunscreen and a big hat and big sunglasses and a UV rash guard, I still tend to get pretty tan in the summer. And so using my winter shade of foundation just looks weird in the summer. And using my summer shade of foundation in the winter looks really weird. So what I would do is I would use one shade of foundation in the winter, one shade of foundation in the summer, and then the whole rest of the year I would just mix the two to always have a perfect match. I don't want to do that anymore. Now, all I want to do is buy my winter shade and then use a liquid bronzer as a shade adjuster. Ideally, the advantage of that is that I only ever have to buy the winter shade of any of my complexion products, and I can just use the bronzer as a shade adjuster to adjust all of them. So instead of buying a summer and winter shade in concealer, summer and winter shade in my matte foundation, and a summer and winter shade in my dewy foundation, I can just have my winter shades and my bronzer. The challenge, of course, is finding a formula that will mix with all of the products that I currently enjoy, but also finding a shade that will work both as a shade adjuster, but also look great on its own as a bronzer. I initially purchased the Armani Luminous Silk Glow Liquid Bronzer, but ended up returning it right away for two reasons. The first was just because my skin hated it. My rosacea flared up immediately and I had texture everywhere. It was ugly. But also the formula had a lot of golden shimmer particles in it. Now, a little bit of sheen or pearl would be one thing, but individual piecey sparkles, no matter how small and elegant they are, and they were small and elegant in that formula, they just have no place in a liquid bronzer for me because I also want to use the bronzer as a shade adjuster. And if I'm going to be mixing it with my foundation, that means those sparkles would get everywhere, so they'd be all over my face. So I returned that one and instead decided to purchase this, which is the Makeup by Mario Soft-Sculpt Bronzing and Shaping Serum in the shade Light. And this one is a much better match for me. The shade is a very neutral shade of bronze on my skin tone, which is great not only for bronzing, but also as a shade adjuster. And I tested mixing this with my Lancome concealer, my Estee Lauder Double Wear foundation, and my Surratt foundation, and it worked beautifully with all of them. I was initially a little bit worried about the finish of this one as well, because if you look in the bottle, you can kind of see a silvery, cool pearl running through there. And I was worried that it might give some kind of sickly, cool looking sheen to my face, or maybe make it look metallic or emphasize texture. Luckily, that's not how this looks. It ends up just giving a very gentle luminosity to the product when I'm using it as a shade adjuster and as a bronzer. As much as I love this as a shade adjuster, I also enjoy it as a bronzer, just straight up, because it's sheer. I can get a very natural, subtle look, but I can also build it up if I need to. So it does everything that I wanted it to, and I ended up being super happy with this purchase. So I don't need a time machine, no regrets. This was a 10 out of 10 for me. Those were my beauty purchases for the past 6 months. As someone who wears makeup as frequently as I do and uses it for as many purposes as I do, this feels pretty moderate at first glance, but maybe I'm not seeing the forest for the trees, so maybe you want to chime in. Also, let's take a minute to really see if I made good decisions or if I should learn from anything here so I can readjust my behavior in the future. Let's go by category and let's start with the lip balms. When I look at the purchases that I made, I purchased essentially 2 of the same exact product. They're both clear lip balms. They both have SPF in them. And that does feel like a lot because I know how long it takes me to use up things like this. It's probably going to take me about 2 years to use up these 2 things. I don't think that that's an unrealistic amount of time. I do think that I can use them up before they go bad, so that's good in that sense. The question is, was it a necessary purchase? And the answer to that is clearly no. I had what I needed. This was just kind of an extra purchase, but I didn't purchase this because I just wanted to get something new. I purchased this because I needed to solve a problem, and that was that I never had a lip balm to hand when I needed one. And as soon as I solved this, I solved the problem because all of a sudden I had one for every handbag and every pocket. So no matter what, I always had lip sunscreen with me. In that sense, I do think that even though it's a lot, this was a convenience purchase. And so I think it does add enough value to say it was a logical purchase. So I don't think I necessarily need to re-examine any behaviors there. I just have to make sure that I don't purchase any more of this thing until these are used up. Next is foundations, of which I purchased 2. Now, I don't know about you, but that feels like a lot of foundation, especially because I purchased both of these things to replace other things that had expired. And why did those things expire? Because I didn't use them up fast enough. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, Stephanie, if you didn't use them up fast enough, maybe it's because you didn't actually need them in the first place. And there is definitely a logic to that, which I 100% follow. But this is the point where I would say maybe you want to go and watch my foundation declutter, because in that video, that's where I evaluated what I had and decided I wanted to change not only my purchasing behavior towards this foundation category, but also towards the way I use my foundations. Because what I had been doing was keeping my favorite things in the drawer to use for special occasions and using up my cheaper products that I didn't like so much. And the end result was that I ended up having these beautiful products that expired. But now they are gone. So this is basically my fresh start. If you want to hear more about the logic, about the lessons that I learned from my prior mistakes, feel free to go and watch that video. I'll link it below for you. Because these are my fresh start products in those necessary categories for me, this is my only dewy foundation, this is my only cream foundation, I do think that these were wise decisions, but that doesn't mean that I can just stop observing my behavior going forward. I need to make sure that I don't purchase any more in those categories. And I also need to see how I'm using them, because the way we use makeup does change over time. And I need to make sure that I continue to make decisions that I feel are wise. So I'm still going to keep an eye on how I use these up. When it comes to the Makeup by Mario bronzer, this is the one decision that I really feel like I just hit out of the park, because not only is it excellent as a bronzer, it's also a multitasking product because I can also use it as a shade adjuster. This is the one and only liquid bronzer that I own, so in that sense, I feel like it's a wise decision because it's so useful. But also, this cuts down on the amount of foundation I will need to buy in the future, and this solves the problem that I was having with over-purchasing foundations. So this product is not only good on its own, but it solves other problems in other categories. So all I can say is, I think out of all the decisions I made over the past 6 months, this one was by far the smartest one. Thanks for hanging out with me today, despite the fact that I have kind of a roughed up voice. It's just a reflection of the rough time I've been having lately, which is why it was so much fun for me to be able to spend some time with you today. If you'd like to see some of the past mistakes I've made and how I am trying to remedy them by changing my behavior in the future, feel free to check out this video here. If you like beauty content with a smidge of conscious consumerism, then please like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. But even if you don't, I hope you have a great week, and we can all remember that even stumbling can be a form of moving forward. So let's stumble in style.